All right, welcome everybody. This is Barney Quincy. We are back here live and in the flesh and blood, physically here in Canada, but also online and streaming from around the world, wherever you're tuning in from, whenever you're tuning in. I just want to say thank you and you're welcome at the same time. I say thank you for participating and helping make this fun and exciting and interactive and engaging for these Facebook Live weekly calls that we have with the Animal Wellness Summit. And also you're welcome at the same time because we do these for you. So when and as you guys are coming on live, just let me know where you're tuning in from, because I see that my internet connection is a little bit slow, even though this is just the way it works when you live out in the country. But let me know that you can hear me okay, Sara-Jane, if you can give me a nod just to make sure that you can hear me okay. Great. Okay. Awesome. Okay, I know I look a little bit pixelated on my live feed here, but anyways, we're going to get straight into it. So last week we had Donna Woods, who was going to be on, and she had been informed, I think the day before, that she was to have an FDA inspection of her facility. I'm not entirely certain what that all was entailing, but I know that usually when the FDA calls, or the IRS or the government or anything like that, it's best to comply with that. So that's why we were unable to be on last week. And I gave you guys all an update about our, we only do this, I shouldn't say we only do this, in fact, we've never done this before. We're only going to do it once a year if we ever do it again, but we have a BOGO special on where you buy one, get one, where you can buy a VIP membership for the year and you get one free that you can share with another friend, a team member, a colleague, or a client. And so take advantage of that. And we're going to jump in today's call to introduce and welcome Sara-Jane Farrell all the way from South Africa. She's a very knowledgeable, educated, and inspired presenter and speaker and human being in general. I love listening to her teach. And I'm sure that you will too. So as we keep going live, before I bring Sara-Jane in, what I'd love to encourage you to do, if you're here with us, if something resonates with you, or you get inspired and somebody comes to mind and you think that maybe it would be good to share this with that person that comes to mind, then just go ahead and tag them in on the comments there. And if you're after watching this as a replay, then you can do the same thing. You can share it, you can tag it, and these replays are also on our YouTube channel. So that's all the housekeeping items out of the way. And now I'm going to click this magic button, and all the way we're going to connect Canada all the way to South Africa. So welcome, Sara-Jane. Great to have you.
Thanks, Bonnie. It's always great to be here and share the knowledge and come together as a tribe. I wanted to be here and to support this amazing group of people that love their animals any which way I can. So thank you for having me back again.
Yeah, well, you're more than welcome. And it's just great to have you here. So I thank you for taking the time for us today. So before we get into a little bit about your backstory, I know some people already know who you are and some people have no idea. So if you can give us just kind of a brief little synopsis or background, and then let's jump into why you were stateside and kind of how long you were here and what you were doing. And then let's get into some questions, because we're going to be talking about some interesting stuff today. So I'll let you just give a little overview.
Thank you. So yeah, I really am on a mission to empower people that love animals and care for animals. Most of them are highly sensitive, feeling beings that want to see a better world than we currently have. And I just realized over the last 20 years of working with animals and people to sort of resolve unconscious trauma patterns that are working on them, and oftentimes where there are animal companions who are so close to them take a lot of that on for us to grow us into good human beings. I want people to be their own medicine, not only for themselves, but to really understand how their animals are wired from a nervous system point of view. And also to know that they have everything that they need to actually be the best human that they can be, and take back medicine from Dr. Whitecoat, who often is overwhelming and confusing and costs a lot of money, to know that you can heal your animals naturally.
Cool. So what do you, I'm going to take this off right here. I'm going to put your website right at the bottom. So if you by the way, if you guys want to go check out Sara-Jane's website, you can just go to Sara-Jane-Farrell.com, or she said Farrell.com. And but you can see it up there. You can click on it, and this is great. We have Canada, Northern California, Michigan, Utah, and now South Africa. So maybe we'll get somebody in Europe to join on too, and then we'll have 3 countries on.
That'd be good.
And if somebody was from Texas, then we could say we have a 5th country on, because apparently they consider Texas their own little country.
Yeah,
that's a little joke.
Yeah, you can fit South Africa and Texas, I think, about 10 times. That's how small this country is. But
yeah,
you know, I think it doesn't matter where you are demographically. We all want the same thing, which is safety and connection and a sense of belonging. You know, that we're making a difference in the world, and that we're using our small, mighty lives to you know, make a difference to those animals that don't have a voice.
Right. Yeah. So I agree. That part now that do you mind sharing about why you came to the US and you were here for 4 months? Because I think that there's a pretty cool story behind that.
Always. I kind of go where the animals call me. Actually, it's interesting how when you kind of surrender to the divine and you get your mind out of the way, how things start to show up. So I was really called because I do a lot of work on the ground here in Africa with orphaned rhinos and elephants, because they're actually facing extinction along with a lot of other species. But most people, you know, have an affinity to just want to love animals like elephants and dolphins and whales, and we have that sort of similar connection. And the elephants have been insistent for the last couple of years that I go to Hawaii in specific, to go and speak with the humpback whales, because a lot of people might know this, but the elephants hold the exact polar opposite on the Neolithic grid lines to the humpback whales in the Northern Hemisphere. And, you know, there's an urgency that they're actually calling us to come back to our hearts and to remember who we are, the guardians and the stewards of this planet rather than the destroyers. So I was kind of just followed the guidance of that. I didn't know how I was ever going to get to Hawaii, but it kind of opened up, and I was honored to be able to swim with humpback whales and dolphins and actually start to learn some of their wisdom that was very much in congruency and alignment with what the elephants are saying, that we need to, you know, spread the word across the planet that they are so generous and patient with us, and they really want us to know that if we're going to change the trajectory that we are on, which is, you know, really the survival of our own species, that we need to heal our own trauma before we can actually start to help other animals to do that. So that was my mission, and I followed very willingly, and then opened up to a lot of other sort of very synchronistic invitations to work with a lot of horses in the horse world in America, and also just share the wisdom that I've learned from not only the sentient beings, the lions and the elephants, but our domestic animals that we share our lives with.
Yeah, well, that's pretty neat, and I think that it's I mean, that's how this whole event got started, really. In the first place was really just a vision that I was given 9 years ago, actually just this past month, April the 23rd, 2010 at like 2 a.m. I was at a traditional native healing circle. And not that I remember the details specifically, but and I remember getting the vision and the inspiration for impacting and educating millions and millions of people around the world to get better in touch and in tune with the plant and animal kingdom. And I was like, what the heck? I'm like, I'm a gym owner, a personal trainer. You know, and so then I first started with my involvement with getting in Young Living, with just using the oils and having an interest there, and you know, just really exploring that and using them on myself and with my clients. And I'm like, wow, these things work, and they work consistently and almost work every time. And so that was cool as a training tool. And then what came out of that was Liz Reyes, who's known as the Oily Dog trainer from California. And she said, hey, we need to, I think there'd be really an interest to do an animal wellness summit. And I'm like, cool. And she's like, yeah, but I think you should do it. And then I'm like, well, I'm not an animal wellness expert. And I'm just sharing this because some of you might be, this is the first time hearing, because I've had people have asked the question just out of genuine, pure curiosity, like, why is this bald-headed, crazy Canadian dude doing the Animal Wellness Summit? And part of my specialty in like gift, like offering and/or gift and skill set is in not only marketing and advertising, but building communities of people and sharing communities of people so that you presenters like you, Sara-Jane, that have things to share with people who care that are on. That's why we're all together. You know, so
I'm so grateful that you followed your heart and
yeah.
just got your mind out of the way, because I think that's really, really what we need to remember in all of this, is that we are animal. In essence, we have a soft animal body, and you know, society and cultural mores and morality have really taken us out of listening to our intuition and following our gut knowing, and rewarded, you know, this sort of ranking system of thinking that we have domination and power over other species because we have a limbic brain that thinks, rather than knowing that, right, you know, we are all sentient beings and we all share that common goal. And we've kind of lost our way, haven't we? We've forgotten our hearts and forgotten empathy to a large extent.
Yeah, I think it's that, and I mean, I also think that it's just that there's clearly a reason for it, right? When there's an imbalance, in order to have, you know, balance, the perception of imbalance has to exist in order to bring something into balance. And so we have that perception of an imbalance to create the imbalance. But I've learned a lot myself, this is just from my personal journey, that it's the perception of our experiences and situations in life that change significantly how we relate to them. And I just think that it's so cool. I mean, I've had that many opportunities to just like, you know what, this is a ton of work. We put this thing on for free, but it doesn't mean that it's free to put on for the maintaining the customer service. Paying my assistant, Jamie, who's amazing, who does a lot of the stuff behind the scenes. And, you know, I think I only want to share this because part of what you're doing and we're all doing together, you guys all being part of this with the live call and in the future as a replay, is that the best option or the best opportunity is really to listen to that like inner guidance, which I believe is our intuition, our innate intelligence. Some believe that it's God directly speaking to them, or the universe or great spirit. But either way, however you interpret that, I think that you follow those inner promptings. And so I'm curious, as we get into this, the doshas, you know, when you talk about the doshas, like what are they? Because that was your presentation from last year. And so maybe you can just give us a brief synopsis into that, because next week on the 29th, we're doing the monthly mini masterclass and you're the presenters. So this is a good kind of prelude for that. So can you tell us, does the doshas have, explain that, and then next get into, once you have a better understanding of what they are and how you can better understand your animals, that's where I think intuition has to come into play in order to make just to make a better connection. So I'll let you get
yeah, and I love that, because you touched on a very important part of that, which is our mind is a story-making machine. And I think that when we have things like dosha quizzes or Myers-Briggs or Enneagram or any of these sort of means to start to get a better understanding of how we're wired and how we tick, then without anthropomorphizing our animals, without putting sort of our human context onto animals, there is this crossover because we're basically all wired for connection and safety. So I know the year before, I kind of introduced everybody to the 5-element theory. And that really is a practice of knowing that we are all, as living species, going through our own season, that there's a time for everything, and that every element feeds the other, that we can't create in a vacuum, and we certainly can't create connections or use our imagination in a good way when we're in a vacuum. So that was sort of last year's presentation, was the 5-element theory. And then this year I wanted to sort of go go into a different tangent, because Chinese medicine and the Eastern philosophy is my background. And of course, Ayurvedic is the Indian dosha typing, which actually flows into the element theory. So it's really in simplistic terms, if you've listened to the presentations, it's looking at how we either are functioning in a place where we all want to be, which is harmony, where we have safety and connection, so we're able to then start to create and use our prefrontal lobe to create great things in the world. But when it's out of balance, we're either under or we're over. So we're either pathological in the way that we're reacting to life, just as our animals do, especially the ones that share our lives with us and are taking on a lot of our mental constructs, or we're deficient in something. So I know you had Dr. Judy Morgan on also talking about traditional Chinese veterinary medicine, and I love her.
Yeah.
Share that sort of similar belief system that that hurt people. And if we don't care about ourselves and actually start to understand how we're wired, we can't show up in a good way to help change the things that we're seeing with animals that we don't like. So, this is very ancient wisdom. And if you just start to sort of know how you tick, it's always interesting, and I love the feedback that I've got from people that have actually taken the dosha quiz, which you can do over on my website, how either people were exactly the same sort of predisposition in their personality traits as they were to their animals, or they actually started to understand that if they were perhaps vata, so very airy, very in their heads all the time, very wiry, very unable to settle, a lot of metal and wood element going on there, so very dry, very brittle, very rigid in their thinking, that they often had an animal companion in their life that was perhaps very kapha, so very watery, very earth-based, so very grounded, that calmed them and actually brought them back down to earth and out of their heads. And how beautifully our animals, as our soul teachers, come into our lives to teach us as messengers to be good humans and actually start to resolve some of our own internal conflict and our own unresolved trauma. So it's just a beautiful way. And one of the healing principles of Ayurveda is that mind-body healing science that kind of flows and dovetails with Chinese medicine, where we start to understand how we're wired to thrive, and how oftentimes we're so stuck in that lower sort of Maslow's theory of survival that we never ever quite break free out of the worry, out of the constant mind chatter, to be able to actually create some peace of mind and safety, which of course is the best gift that you can give to your animals, because they're listening to all your mental chatter, and oftentimes they'll take on our illnesses, our imbalances, and we see that through disease or behavioral traits that we don't want, in their attempt to actually wake us up, to actually sort our own crap out. So, it really teaches us how unique we are, but also how similar we are in a lot of places. And that way, if we can just sort of educate and empower ourselves when it comes to self-care, then we can start to remember that our animal companions are in that circle of influence. So we can start to see our dogs and cats and horses and birds as these beautiful lesson teachers, and the multidimensional beings that they are, where they're not only supporting our optimal health, but that we need to help them maintaining vitality. So I hope that I didn't wander too off the subject there, but I think it's just like when you can actually start to determine the constitution or the personality traits of your dog or your cat or your horse, then you can start to empower yourself. You can start to get excited rather than worried and concerned, and also trust your gut when a vet perhaps wants to give you something that's invasive or is going against what you know your animal needs, because just like your body, you know your animal better than anybody else. And I think we give a lot of power away to people that we entrust our animals' lives to, that often don't have their best interests at heart.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you didn't go on a tangent at all. It was a lot all at once, which is amazing because I was following you along, and I think everybody else was too. Which, by the way, for those of you still on, or that you're on live, just comment below, like what did you like best about what Sara-Jane just said? Anything that stuck out to you? I know that Gina, welcome Gina, all the way from Pennsylvania.
Cool.
Just saying that that loves the 5 elements. And Gail, I just want to acknowledge you didn't miss that much now that you're here, but even if you did, you can go back and watch the replay. And I think that that is, like what you said, to bring up the empowerment side of just having more information. There's a fine balance with that, of course, because more information doesn't always mean more in a better way. It can get paralysis of analysis, but having clarity and certainty and knowing more specific detail and understanding, as you said, the doshas, I think that I want to encourage you guys who, if you're just kind of exploring this a little bit more, Sara-Jane I put the link here. I went to your website and found it. So you just go to sarajanefarrell.com/opt-in, and opt-in is separated with a hyphen, or just click the link on the call. And I do want to show you, for those of you who are members of our VIP and platinum members, is that when you go into let me just show you this real quick. So when you're in the members area, and by the way, if you're watching this and you're not a member, you can reach out to us and we'll help you become a member, because this is what's neat about this. And Sara-Jane, I want you to see this too, is that when you're on these calls, you know, it's great when you get inspired and you're like, wow, I want to go look more into this. But the neat part is Sara-Jane has done 2 presentations. So what I did is I logged in, and then there's a little search bar. I typed in Sara-Jane. First, I put in just Sarah and then Sara-Jane space, and it didn't come up. And I realized that because the way we have you in our system is Sarah-Jane. And you scroll down here and you'll see her 2 presentations, and you can simply just right click on them, open them in a new tab. Or if you're in our app, you can just search for it. But here is her first one from 2017, the 5 elements of traditional Chinese medicine. And then last year, this is where she talked about this, as it says right here, this presentation is an hour long and goes into more detail about what she just said right there. Because I just wanted to share that, because what we find, I need to take this out of here now so we can get back on. What I find is that people, they get on and they want to go back and learn and listen. And that's the benefits and perks to you as members, to go back and listen. You can, read the PDF, like the transcript or the audio, but just because it's impossible for you to explain it in full detail exactly how it all works. So when they go into, they as in people that are watching, everybody tuning in, and they take the quiz, well, that is for them, because I think this question came up before. They're taking the quiz to understand theirs as a human being, or is it how it relates to their animal?
Okay, so that's a great question. So, again, I think this is where you can actually apply the same questions to you, but this one is particularly designed for you to actually understand your animals better. And of course, in doing that, you're gonna understand yourself more, because the same principles of the doshas apply. So it's a beautiful way for you to start to understand why your animals come into your life as a teacher, and also where you may be deficient or over sufficient in some of the qualities that might be stressing your animal out or making them sick. So when they take the quiz, they're going to get another video that's going to explain the dosha type that they are. And just remember too, just like the 5 elements, we're not one. We're made up of all the elements or all the dosha. But depending on, and this is what's important too, depending on the environmental triggers. So everything outside of your body is a trigger. And the same for your animal. So depending on what environment you are, you may find that your animal becomes more vata in a situation where there's high stress. or you might find that you become more Peter, right? You're like the little pit bull that can't, that's hanging on and is pretty angry and aggressive in a situation where perhaps your boundaries are being challenged. So it's a beautiful interface, and even though it's a little general, just for keeping this simple for people to get a basic understanding of it, you can go deeper into this than you do when you actually take the quiz, and you're going to get into a sequence of more information and tools and dietary supplements that you can apply to your animal. And because we're animal bodied, of course you can apply the same thing to you.
Okay, well, that's cool. So I think that, so when you said the personality, did you reference a personality Myers-Briggs? Is that what you were saying?
I'm saying that I think people resonate with quizzes or being able to profile, and again, it's more than just saying, oh, you're a Gemini, so you're scattered, you're all over the place, which I am. I have a very I have a very disorganized, anxious style of attachment. That's a whole nother part of my work. But when you start to understand how you're wired from childhood, or how your dog or your cat may be wired, especially if they come from a traumatic background, it gives you more compassion and also more confidence to actually know that your animal chose you as much as you chose them, because as much as you're growing them, they're growing you. So it's this beautiful synergistic give and take relationship where we just all grow together.
Yeah, it's definitely coming from a place of empowerment, not that you're like, oh, well, it's like a diagnosis, like, well, now you have stage 4 cancer or whatever. I remember something that has always stuck with me from my holistic health career. I mean, I'm still in it, but not as much as I was as a practitioner in my gyms and training and coaching clients and working with my team. But one of my mentors always said that it's best to not treat the disease that has the person, but treat the person that has the disease. As a metaphor with what you're talking about, when you go and discover your dosha or the animal's doshas, because you did say it was about discovering the animals, is that right?
Yes, right. And in so doing, you're going to discover about yourself,
learn more about yourself, right? But it's to have empowerment, not to have a label that, oh, well, I'm like this, so they're like that, and it's completely static and fixed. It's a dynamic, constantly changing, fluid kind of relationship. Just like, I mean, in partnerships, like my wife and I'm a very driven, results-oriented person and like task-oriented. My wife is too, in different ways, and how we have our values in our family unit. And it's interesting just seeing that. And sometimes we look at it and think, oh, we're out of balance, and we're, she's really here, or she's really here and I'm really here. But it's that when we look at it, we complement and complete each other. Not that we're competing. But I say that just because I think that, said this was funny, Sarah May, which now that I know that we do have 4 countries, because she's in the UK, and Eva's on here, so we're in Spain as well, so that's 4, I think, which is cool. So she just said, I've just completed the dosha quiz for my otter hound, 36 kilograms down. She's Vata. I will certainly look deeper into this. And then so good on you, Sarah. This is great because you are a member and you can just log in and go in and check out and kind of look a little bit deeper into it. And you're getting some third-party validation here from Eva Survey from Spain saying Sara-Jane is an awesome teacher. So good on you. Thanks for stopping by,
Eva. Yeah, right back at you. Yeah, and I love that you said that, because I think that that's the danger when we start to go into a conclusion that everyone that's a Gemini has to be fickle. They're all over the place. They can't make up their minds. You kind of lock that into place, and nothing greater than that can ever sort of change, because you're going into a conclusion. And why I love this, because you can start to ask generative questions to say, okay, well, now that I know this about my animal, what else is possible? What can I contribute? What needs to change in order to give them even more of a great lifestyle. Rather than thinking, as you said, diagnoses and labels, they're very confining. You know, it's just like if I define myself as this thing, I can never be greater than that. Neither can your animal, and of course they're sentient beings. So you know, if we're saying, oh, my horse is being bad because you don't like a behavior, well, then you're just going to get more of what you want, just as you will if your child's being bad. But when you start looking underneath the hood and get down to the root cause of what's creating the behavior, then you can actually start to be more compassionate and more curious about what needs to change in order to meet them in that sort of two-way dialogue of I see you and I'm willing to honor your wishes, you know, which is the animal communication part of what I do. It's just like, you know, when you get the information straight from your animal's mouth, the next step is what are you going to do with it? You know, because just like a child, you're not going to do what you say you're going to do in order to meet that animal halfway. Then why would they trust you? And they're going to kick up a fuss and keep doing bad behavior to get your attention. That's something needs to be addressed. I remember I had a client once that brought a little Yorkshire Terrier to me, and he was all over the place, and he had some pancreatitis issues going on. And when I asked him, you know, why did he keep peeing in the same corner of the kitchen, which is why she brought me to in the first place, he said, well, that's the only way I get to release the fear of my person being beat up by her husband in the kitchen. You know, you can't make this stuff up. So once she realized that the dog was trying to release some of this fear around her safety for her, then she could actually start to bring in some support that could help her in leaving that situation, so that the dog have to keep telling her and turn the volume up, shouting at her, saying, you can't carry on like this. You're gonna get, you know, your life is in danger.
Yeah, right. Well, that's where I think the perspective of like it can be a narrow-sighted perspective or a short-term kind of viewpoint, or you know, kind of when you're saying that about getting angry at our animals for doing something that we perceive as bad, or you know, tearing up the furniture or peeing in here we don't want them to pee in, but it's really just a feedback loop. But on the flip side, the challenge is from a humble reality of just living life, doing our thing, fulfilling our responsibilities and obligations, but then taking these signs and or the opportunity to be present with acknowledging the messages or the feedback that we're getting from them. And I agree. I think that, you know, I was laughing when you were talking about Geminis, because that's why, for me, I know that that's my personality. I've, you know, beaten myself up in the past over it, and that's why I hire detailed, you know, deadline-driven people like Jamie, who's my assistant. She's phenomenal, and I'm like, just take care of this. Here's the experience we want to give people. I'm the visionary, the connector, and I like to have that freedom to be able to kind of move around and do whatever I feel inspired doing, so I don't feel locked in a cage. And I say that because if we are treating, and this is what really has kind of been made more clear as we've been talking, is that if we're unaware, us as in the pet parent or the owner or caretaker, guardian, however we want to look at ourselves in relationship to our animals, as looking at it as there's something that's happening and we're not as empowered and educated in knowing that, well, this is kind of their predominant nature, so to speak, then it's frustrating, because then you don't really know, and when you don't know, then you can't do better, right?
Exactly. You don't know what you don't know. So right. When we're willing to ask questions rather than go into conclusions, and I love what you said. It's about being present in the now. Animals don't live in the past, and they don't project into the future. Some of them do, especially when they live in close proximity to us, because they're in our thought process and our busy mind that's just chucking so much out there that oftentimes that puts them into a state of anxiety, especially if they're Vata. You know, Geminis, I always say, that we're very airy. You know, we have as you said, we're the visionaries. We have these grand schemes, but we need. We need the kappa, right? We need the earthy people that are pragmatic and
make it happen,
able to physically actualize it and follow it through, because we're not very good at completion.
Yeah.
So we'll often find that our animal companions, although it's interesting, I have a Great Dane rescue that's very vata, so he runs as hot as I do, and he gets very anxious and very nervous, and often gets his stomach in a knot. And oftentimes that's him saying to me, okay, you know, you didn't eat today. You need to, you know, have some warm grounding food in your body. But then I have a 3-legged rescue from an abuse case. That's a staffy. So she's incredibly kapha. She's very earthy, and I have to watch her too, because if she doesn't get her needs met, she becomes really needy. And then I find myself getting irritable, and then I have to go, okay, hold on, how much of what she's showing me right now is me not getting my needs met? Which is where
and I was just gonna, pardon me, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just gonna say that I'm smiling because it's so there's this, like, the perspective of, like, well, I don't believe in or get the astrological signs or the Gemini, you know, but that's a reality of the energy imprint, whether you believe it or not. It's a real thing. And a better understanding it can empower you to better connect with your animal. But I was just thinking that as you were talking, if you didn't get that feedback or weren't aware of it and weren't willing to be present and take that irritability as a feedback from, you know, getting irritated because they as in the animal's doing something. Well, I know that the narrow-sighted perspective would be like just constantly getting annoyed and seeing that something is being done to them and not being like, well, what is this meant to teach me, or what's the lesson here? But I will also say, because I consider myself, humbly speaking, a fairly conscious or evolved or just aware person. I'm still a human being, put my pants on if you wear pants like everybody else. But that it can be very challenging and also very tiring as well, which is important to make sure that we fill our cups up metaphorically to take care of ourselves, to stay grounded. As you said, your dog, you know, you got that feedback from your dog, and then, oh, well, maybe I didn't eat sufficiently today. Make sure I get some really good, healthy fats in my system to keep my physiology grounded, right?
Yeah.
That's cool.
It takes a lot of the guesswork out of it, because again, you're not just catching yourself in the moment of not being present. And you know, all our animals want us to do is be present. This is why animals in the wild don't get ulcers, because they're not in their heads all the time going, oh, you know, shooting themselves and why didn't I do this? Why didn't I do that? And, you know, I'm running out of time and I can't sing today because my feathers are wet. Or, you know, they don't go into that. They're always working with what is possible in the now. And they're always present with, you know, the plane is pretty flat. And when so that they can notice when something's out of congruence. And everybody in that morphic field is kind of, okay, do we need to run? Or are we going to stand and fight? Or, you know, are we going to go into a freeze state and play dead until the threat passes? We just constantly are, you know, so busy in our minds. And what we forget is that our animals that share our lives with us are really affected by that. And they will surrogate that for you. I've had animals that have, you know, presented with hypothyroidism or pancreatitis, or in worst case scenarios, they've come down with, you know, chronic disease like cancers. And when we heal that in them by going onto the epigenetic markers and seeing what's at the root cause of all of that, 90% of the time it's the person. And when you kind of heal the animal and take that responsibility away from them, then you actually see what looks like a chronic healing state come up from the person that might be sort of borderline diabetic, and you know, thinking that they're managing it. But when the animal steps out, just like we do this with people as well that we're caring for, when you step out, then the person has to make a choice, you know, whether they heal and do some lifestyle changes, or whether they're actually going to be, you know, get taken down by the disease.
Right. Yeah, that's that's, as you were talking there, talking about the animals don't get ulcers in the wild. I was chuckling, and I'll just put up Eva's comment here about lack of understanding. Which, yeah, a lot of the challenges come from a lack of understanding. Which, side note, that's why you guys are the work that you're doing. You guys, as in all the presenters that are in behalf of the Animal Wellness Summit, where our intention is at the core of just really bringing more light to the work that you guys are doing to grow the community, so collectively we can keep helping, serving, and reaching and impacting each other. But it reminded me of a funny story that this same guy, this guy by the name of Paul Chek, has been a huge influence in my life from a holistic perspective. Yeah. You know Paul?
I do.
Yeah. He's another bald-headed Canadian, actually lives in California. He's got a great podcast on right now. He just started, he's on like 30 episodes in, but just if you're interested in looking into, just be prepared. He's considered to be a little out there, but when you get in and really look at his work, he's on point on so many things. And I just want to share this because I think this is really impactful. He was doing a presentation one time and he put up this big presentation, and he put up this article. He had an article to put up and said, these animal researchers are perplexed and scratching their heads because they found these giraffes with increased having heart issues because they're having high cholesterol. And then the lions were having issues with like losing weight because they were eating more of like a vegan or vegetarian diet. And he was just saying as a bit of, he's like, did you guys hear about that story? And he's like, well, you didn't because I made it up. And he said it as a bit of a joke because he said in the wild with innate intelligence that is born in or built into our everybody's body, that they just know intuitively what to do, and they don't go, as you said, go into their mind, but they're not like, oh well, I read a diet book the other day, or I went on Google to should I do keto or intermittent fasting, or should I be a vegan or vegetarian or whatever. And it was just funny because he just said it to make a point that even if you did see an article like that, it doesn't mean that it's actually
true,
that it's real, but that when things are in balance and we're in alignment with the way that the universe, nature, God has created our world and us to interact with the animals, and our plant and the animal kingdom as well, that things just work for the most part a lot better, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, and I want to pull this up here. By the way, there was Gina. And then, by the way, guys, if you have any other questions for Sara-Jane, just keep posting them down below. But Gina, I don't know if Gina's still on here, but she's just saying, love this. I'm a vet and do acupuncture in horses and dogs. So I think she was resonating with this for sure. And Sarah May saying she completed the quiz and she'll check out the video for Vada after this because she just did the quiz, I think, while we were on the call. And then this just made me smile. So power to all the Geminis out there. Anita, usually have a tendency to drive our partners or people that are around us crazy. But then I have my wife just step back sometimes and just say, she's like, I don't know where you get all these ideas from. I don't know how you do it, but it's cool. She has, I know it drives her nuts sometimes, but she also has respect for it.
Oh, that's great.
And then Danita was saying, I have a miniature poodle that is a hot, emotional mess.
Yeah.
And that the connections with us as their human is fascinating, and with other animals too. And that she's just saying that she can't wait to take the quiz.
Oh, good. Yeah. And yeah, when animals run really hot like that too, I mean, it's great that she's aware of that. So, when it, again, this is where it's so invaluable to understand how the doshas work and when they're in balance, because a lot of times, I mean, poodles are incredibly intelligent, they're
Gemini.
Yeah, they're really, they're so high energy, they're alert, they're really intelligent. And they do tend to run a hot mess, then you can look at, how do you sort of balance some of that sort of pitta, and a lot of times it's two, so she might be a little pitta vata, but this is where you kind of, get them into the swimming pool or into the sprinklers, and you just sort of designate cool places for her to rest, and you can meditate. Poodles love meditation and dog yoga, so you could try some of that out. I think whole purpose of that animals, especially dogs, constantly remind us is that what if the whole purpose of being in this human experience is just to play more, just to have more fun. And of course, you can start to give her things like bone broth where there's turmeric in it, which is very cooling and anti-inflammatory. So that Ayurvedic sort of golden paste is really good for those dogs that run really, really hot. And you can give them things like beef, which is really neutral, with barley and oats, and perhaps some apples or sweet potatoes, which are all very cooling. Mm-hmm. So cooling foods are really ideal. They also like my one hot dog loves cucumber and apple and aloe vera and parsley. So mixing some of that the food, just again, I think it's really great when you are so in tune, like she is, to her animals' sort of tendencies to run hot, that you can actually start to get excited about, creating more longevity, more vitality in your animal's life. And in doing that, care better for yourself too. The way my dogs eat, I think they eat a lot better than a lot of humans. So we all share the same plates, which is pretty cool. But just the value of feeding species appropriate diet. You can take it even deeper when you can actually make them dosha appropriate diets. And there's some great brands out there like Honest Kitchen that are actually preparing meals according to dosha types, so to take all the guesswork and the labor out of that, which is really lovely to see.
Well, that's pretty cool. Melissa just commented here. Aquarius here did she's making her statement for the Aquarius because there's been a predominance of Geminis. Not to mention Eva. I know exactly what Eva is referring to, which is thanks for the wink there, Eva. But yes, I you don't have to be sorry. I am who I am, and that's why she just said that explains a lot because now she knows that.
Okay. Yeah, so more compassion, right? When you know how we're wired.
Yeah.
Then there's no forcing your dog or the people in your life to be anything other than what they are. There's no disappointment then when you actually know that the behavior is predictable. And then you can start to work with what is possible rather than forcing yourself, as you said, into this big, hot, frustrated, irritable mess by wanting your dog or your cat or your horse to perform or do certain things that they actually can't unless you create that safety and that beautiful two-way dialogue of, well, could you meet me halfway? What could you do? What is the compromise? And then it becomes fun. It puts the joy back into, teaching a dog new tricks, or your horse to overcome his fear of plastic bags when you know that, he's hypersensitive to that because he runs on the very anxious, vatas, nervous energy. Right.
Yeah, that and for me, I was gonna, before I got sidetracked, welcome to Gemini Land with the Aquarius. Yeah, it was us together. It could be dangerous.
Very.
So Melissa just said, did doshas for all my friends. Very fascinating. Fits what I intuit they are. Teaching me, so cool. Thank you, Sara-Jane. So I don't know when she said friends. It'd be interesting, Melissa, if you're still on, to let us know. Are you referring to like human friends or animal friends or both? But yeah, I really just think that I went through a phase actually with one of my ex-girlfriends, Katie, who I have a lot of gratitude for if she ever watches this someday. It's common to say with an ex, like, oh, it was a bad experience and we broke up and whatever. But it was a very fun relationship. We had a lot of great times, but we had equal challenging times to balance it out. And one of the things, it was a big turning point in my kind of personal development was it talked about doing personality quizzes, and she was very, against it and adamant because then we had this big conversation about it. But in the quiz that we were using at the time was the old DISC or DISC method, or like the red, blue, yellow, green. And I was a DI or an ID, which is more like a decision maker, a doer, person that typically likes to be in a dominant role. And then there's the I, which is the inspiring, the intuitive, the outgoing, life of the party, all over the place. You could say a fart in a mitten, which is like everywhere, nowhere at once. And so, but the thing, and I just wanted to, I hope these stories are helpful, because what came of that was that she just didn't really, she had a thing against, like, oh, well, now this is, it's like a label. Well, now I'm like this, and I just, I'm all over the place and blah, blah, blah. And I don't think that it has to be that way. It's just that, like you've said many times, but I think that this is, and let me know if you agree, Sara-Jane, but I think this is like a fundamental, foundational, very important, kind of crucial component of when you understand the doshas or personality types or quizzes or even your astrological sign, so to speak, is that it doesn't have to be a label and like this is just who you are and there's no changing it, but that it gives that empowerment to be more knowledgeable.
Yeah, it's an opportunity for growth. Like you were saying, you don't know what you don't know. And when you can start to understand how you're wired, how you tick, I go into a lot of depth with this in my trauma work with people, where you start to get to the root cause of why you created certain attachment patterns. And there's a whole attachment theory, whether you're avoidant or ambivalent or, disorganized and a mix of all of that, then you can actually start to understand how you can come back to creating your own safety. And that's what our animals want. They want us to be the safety, the pack leader that's going to take the lead and keep the rest of the pack safe. And it's when we don't step into that role, because we're all over the place. Nobody follows a wanderer, I think it goes. So we're kind of all over the place, and you're not being present, and you're not focusing on being present when you walk your dog or you're riding your horse. That animal's not going to feel very safe, and then they're going to have to take the lead. And then, of course, that's when we go into judging them as, being bad or whatever we label it, which is very unkind to them, because they're just doing what they're wired to do, which is, I'm not feeling safe. I have to take the lead. I need to create my own safety. And right now, a person that's in their head and all over the place and going into all the worst case scenarios of what could happen, which is another reason why animals don't like us to be really heavy and worried. Again, it's a lesson in us in teaching us how to stay grounded and focused on what we can do when they're sick. It's just like they want to get as far away from us as possible when we're in that state of worry, because it's not a helpful state for them. They want us to be high. They want us to be looking at, what is possible, and actually just celebrating their life, especially at the end of days, when their health starts to deteriorate and they're getting ready to check out. I know it's difficult, but again, it's a great practice in teaching us how to be good human beings, in actually going into how can I stay in celebrating a life that I've shared with this animal, so that they can die well, right? And we can grieve well after they're gone.
Because that's inevitable. Most of us are going to outlive our pets and animals. And I mean, we didn't see that coming last year with Lucy, our little dog. She just took off and wasn't feeling well. And what we found out later, or what we believe happened, was just that something was wrong. She wasn't feeling well, and she ran away and died. And maybe that's just on the surface. That's easier to believe than somebody took her or picked her up and just thought they'd keep her. But we didn't see that coming at all, and it just happened. And it is having that better understanding, being more empowered. And I know that we've talked a lot about the doshas, and I think that it is that knowledge and information that, once better understood and clarified, then you can be more empowered. When you know more, you can do better. The challenging part is when you are empowered with the knowledge and information and or education, and you don't act on it. It actually is physiologically, from my experience, more stressful to the body and to the mind to not act on it than if you just didn't know, right?
Yeah, and also to not in honoring of your animal's wishes,
right?
Because it's just like we're listening, we're following their mental cues, we're following their subtle cues, we're doing a little, intuitive interspecies communication. And it's just like, like a child, if if you are if you're on some level being emotionally neglecting that child, eventually that child's gonna think that their needs are never going to get met. So therefore they have to protect themselves, right? All the protective, not limiting beliefs that we come up with as children. The same applies to animals.
Right.
So, you know, this is where you see the shutdown horse, the animal that's in learned helplessness.
Right.
Because it's just like, what's the point? You're not listening to me anyway. Nothing's going to change. And we see animals really checked out. That don't have, you know, they have dull eyes. Their demeanor, just like it would show up as a child that's given up hope,
Right.
is a collapsed zone.
Right.
And you feel it, and you feel it in your own body. And then, of course, guilt sets in. So we don't want to go into guilt. We want to go into, okay, now that I know it, what can I do different to support my animal in resolving whatever it is that they're going through? So, you know, it's just like that thing of do unto others as you would have done unto you. Well, all you have known as an animal that's been abused or kicked or beaten and starved to death as punishment because it did something wrong, how can you expect that animal to do anything else but distrust that person? You know, the same as if it happened with an animal. We do what we have been, what has been done unto us. So if you've grown up not trusting that people are going to keep their word, that people aren't going to consistently have your back and create safety for you as a child, then we grow up as animals to be very distrustful of people, which is pretty difficult when you're trying to build team or find the love of your life. So you know, I think I hope that if anything that people get out of this is that we need to connect with our own internal soft animal body. Remember that we are animal, and we also have a predator and a prey aspect to us. So, you know, the choice is, what kind of leader are you going to be? What kind of guardian are you going to be for your animals? And how can you, you know, take the information? You know, education is amazing, but as you said, we have to apply the training consistently so that we can rebuild trust with our animals, and that they can actually start to have realization learning where they go, wow, I can't have that point of view about my person, you know, never listening to my asks, because we're consistently delivering and we're building that relationship through mutual cooperation. And who doesn't want that in any relationship, whether it's with another human or with an animal?
Yeah, I agree. I think that when you'd said that about the part just about being more, just being more conscious and aware, I think that's when stuff happens or things come up, like we're building a new house right now and there's just thing after the other, and amazing and awesome. And I'm sure people on the serve and look and see the nice pictures we post the house, but underneath, if anybody's ever built a house or renovated, I'm sure you know exactly what I'm referring to, because it's beyond chaos and stressful and challenging, but that's where both sides of the polarities exist. But basically you had said about being able to be aware of what's happening, and when things come up or there's a problem or a challenge, to bring our awareness to something in order to restore balance, or even the perception of balance, is that I find, I was talking to my friend about this the other day, Conrad, and he's going, I relate this because I think when we go to deal with, when we're working with our animals, is what's my responsibility? What's my lesson in this? What can I learn from this? And I was dealing with something and I literally just wanted to physically smash something. I was very upset, and I'm like, oh, and then I'm like, oh, I got upset. I'm like, you know what? I just need to express the emotion, get it out, and then look at it. Okay, well, here's what happened. This was my responsibility, or this is my contribution to the situation. What can I control? And this goes back to what you said earlier about we talked about fairly extensively, which I think is important, is the labels that we might place on ourselves or animals. And I think that even though that can be challenging or maybe not dangerous, but just it can be restrictive. But and from a neurological standpoint, that's how we're wired, is to kind of sort and organize and kind of label, like, this is safe, this is a threat, this isn't, and it's so that part of that exists in our physical, like in our animal bodies, but also in their animal bodies as well, to know, am I safe or am I under threat? So does that make sense to you with your experience and the work that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's just like that old critter brain of ours hasn't really evolved to knowing that, you know, the dangers of the saber-toothed tiger are actually still, you know, that brain hasn't updated it's on a nervous system point of view. It's still running from that brain being that story making machine, that because I was hurt once and I'm going to be hurt by everyone.
Right.
You know, or because someone said I'm stupid, that I will always be stupid. And I think that's where we go into anthropomorphizing or projecting that onto our animals, who don't have a vicious bone in their body. You know, when they're afraid, they show fear. When they're frustrated, they show frustration. They don't put masks and filters or on things the way that we do. And I think that's where horses are such great mirrors as far as teachers, because they mirror back to us our blind spots and also our capacities and our gifts that we can't see, because we're operating from that place that we're intrinsically broken or flawed in some way.
Right.
So I love your sort of metaphor with the house, because I think that's really what we're talking about, is that if you're building if your foundation isn't solid, if it isn't, you know, built, this is where I love looking at houses in the desert, you know, where you see them built on stilts that have the flexibility to move with the changing terrain. Yeah. We have to look at what we're building our lives on, right, and how we're imposing a lot of the limitations and the lies that we bought in the programming, right? Because we're programmed pre-7-year-olds based on our environment and our primary caregivers. That we need to be really aware, like you said, of where we're projecting things from a very human perspective onto our animals who are not wired the same way. And then, you know, as you said, making them wrong, because when they are responding to us not being safe, or somebody else that's approaching you as not being safe, that we make them wrong for growling or, you know, showing their teeth and giving us all the warning signs to say, okay, my personal zone is about to collapse.
Right.
I'm going to go into my primitive response,
self-preservation mode,
to preserve myself, and not keep me safe, but to keep my person safe.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I was going to say that, and the peeing part, like peeing in a different area, or like not in the, you know, it's not convenient, it's not fun, but it's, you know, gives feedback, but it's not a problem out in the wild. Well, whatever, you go, you know, you go pee and there's this part of the grass over there, but it's in the house. Well, that's a problem because I don't want that. But the only reason it's a problem, perception wise, is because this is my idea of what should happen. This is what's happening. And there's a gap there. And then that causes the stress and the challenges. But this is something that I was just going to say, this is where, when you're in your masterclass, so next week on the 29th, it's Wednesday night at 7 p.m. So are you going to be digging in deeper to this, or are you going like on the next level? Because it's related to the doshas, right?
Yeah, and again, I think I would love for all the people in this tribe to actually give us some feedback on, you know, what they want to know more of, so that we can really give them what they want, rather than you know, us sort of just giving generic information, which is always useful, but for us to really be able to hone in on some of the challenges people may be facing, because I think they're very similar. You know, a lot of times, you said, we see a lot of things that are similar in our wants and our want nots with our animals, as far as, you know, behavior or training, or you know, what's going on if they're picky eaters or whatever that is. So to be able to really sort of deep dive and into some of the sort of more medical intuitive scanning might be nice to show people how they can do that, to start to trust their own yes and no's. and to start asking very exact questions as well, because again, you know, we need to be very clear and concise in what we're asking of our animals, because we often ask very open-sided questions that sound like questions, but they're actually conclusions.
Right.
And that's confusing for an animal. And I think also, you know, there's so much depth to this work. Anyone who's studied traditional Chinese medicine or Ayurveda know that the nuances and the subtleties of how deep you can take this work are huge.
Right.
I would really love for anyone that's interested in this and is going to show up next week to maybe give us some feedback on, you know, what they would like more of, whether that is more depth into perhaps diet appropriate feeding for the doshas, or whether they want to know more sort of alternative remedies. I know you've had Dr. Thomas on, who's amazing as far as alternative and natural remedies for animals. But yeah, I'm open to play with the possibilities, Barney. So
yeah, I was just going to say that for everybody who's still on, and if you watch this as a replay before May the 29th, 2019, the monthly mini masterclasses are something that's included in our members as a membership. So if you're one of our paid members, VIP or Platinum, that means you get access to all the past presentations, all of the recordings, the monthly mini masterclasses that have happened in the past, and then every month we do these live. So next week, you won't be able to jump on just for free, but we do these monthly mini masterclasses where it's on a Zoom call, and the intention is to be a 90-minute training with about 60 minutes of training and then 30 minutes of Q&A. So I encourage you, if you can, at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for us here in Ontario, so whatever time that is in your time zone, that you can either send in your questions or tune in live so you can ask the questions, and then record that entire training as a mini masterclass to just, you know, to do a full masterclass on traditional Chinese medicine and or on the doshas, I'm sure would be pretty lengthy. That's why we do these as a mini masterclass to give you more in depth beyond what we're able to do here. So I think that's what we'll do, and we're definitely out of time for today. I've got to get going here to another appointment, Sara-Jane, but as normal, when two Geminis are on the timelines for all you routine-oriented and timeline-driven people, we probably drive you guys nuts. But I just want to say thank you so much for jumping on with us, and Sara-Jane, and everybody else who's following to Still Live. Just go and check out Sara-Jane. You can go take that quiz for the doshas to discover more about that. And as you saw, if you were on the whole time, that the comments are coming in from people who've already done it and found it very empowering. So you can just go to sarajjanefarrell.com/opt-in or OPT-in. And then if you're not a VIP member and you want to be, now is the best time to do it, to join until May the 29th. We have a BOGO special going on. You can see the details right there. We've never done this before. Just want to do this to celebrate spring as we get closer to the summer. And then the next best time really is any time to join, but this is a great time if you are catching this live. And if not, just want to say thank you for tuning in live. And Alan Ross wanted to leave you a message.
Alan, hi.
Saying hi, dear. I'm presuming referring to you. Finally caught you on live, so thank you.
Wonderful. Yeah, great. Well, always a pleasure, Barney. I look forward to our next conversation. And yeah, I just want to encourage people to get in on this, because yeah, this is really the opportunity for you to ask very specific questions relating to your animal's health. And you know, this kind of really personalized session is priceless. Yeah.
And I would like to also mention, that if you're not a VIP or Platinum member and for whatever reason aren't interested, you can just pay $27, participate in the class live. But if you miss it, then you get you have 30-day access to download the video, the audio, and the transcript after the masterclass is done. So that's pretty awesome. And look forward to next week. We'll be on the 29th at 7 p.m., Sara-Jane, and I'll follow up with you with a couple things after. But we're going to sign off, guys. So thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you guys in the future.
Bye, everyone.
All right.
Bye. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.